I recently held a Recession Survival Workshop in my constituency. Local businesses are the lifeblood of the economy, and it's very important that we do all we can to ensure they survive the recession, and I wanted to play my part. We had some very good speakers on the day, and I want to provide an abridged version of the event. The whole session lasted 2 hours, so I hope this shortened version adequately conveys the messages and the issues raised. First speaking is Mike Warburton. Now Mike's the senior tax partner of Grant Thornton. He's a regular contributor to the national press, including the Times, the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Times. He's a member of the Radio 4 Moneybox team and a frequent contributor on financial matters for Radios 2, 4 and 5. He gives a background to the current economic situation and links the global position to the day-to-day experiences of small businesses in the Forest of Dean. He also gives some advice on how to manage in the current situation.
Credit a good thing? No, you can answer. Shout out.
Yes.
Is credit a good thing? Yeah.
Yes. What kind of credit?
What kind of credit? How much credit? How much credit is good? Is it as good as much as possible or as little as possible? How much is good?
Unsecured or secured?
Secured or unsecured? Yeah, it depends. So it depends on the type of credit. It also depends on who's borrowing. So how much credit is good? And are we talking about individuals? Are we talking about business? Or indeed, dare I say, are we talking about government? Last year, the government ran a deficit of 37 billion. This year, it's going to run a deficit of 78 billion. The year after, it's going to run a deficit of 118 billion. You recognise the numbers, didn't you, Mark? Mark could see where we were going. And we don't know. We don't know what income, what the tax revenues are going to be in 10-11, but we're still budgeting a 4% increase in public expenditure. Now, this is the economics, I don't want to be political here, but just as an accountant, I put it in terms of you running your business, and it was obvious, wasn't it? If it was your business, you simply wouldn't let the expenditure run away like this. You wouldn't do it. You would make sure your income and your expenditure were at least within a reasonable range so that you could borrow what you need to borrow. Sadly, and this affects all of us, and me included, this is serious stuff. We have at the moment a government which is planning expenditure which is completely out of line with what the likely tax revenues are going to be. And things got worse since October. The economic climate hasn't been improving. That's the way it seems to me. So my take on this, and I know there's all sorts of reasons against this, but my take on this, just as an accountant who has to advise businesses before they go to see their bank manager, actually, this doesn't look terribly clever. I would be saying cut costs. If the government is borrowing a lot of money, it makes it actually a lot more difficult for other people to borrow money. And the other question is, where are we going to borrow from? It takes our debt actually up to about $1 trillion by the end of this period, and it's got to be borrowed from somewhere. Now, the bank manager would say no, because I heard you all thinking no, but the government's got to borrow too, so where's it going to borrow from? Is it going to borrow from the pension funds? Do they fancy investing? No. How about the Chinese? Do you think the Chinese are going to bail us out? Well, at the moment, the problem we've got is we're looking to borrow large amounts of money, so individuals, businesses and the government are looking to borrow large amounts of money at a time when we have become a more risky place to lend money to. I mean, we have seen sovereign governments get into difficulty. Iceland. Now, I'm not saying that we're Iceland, we're not Reykjavik on spends yet, but the cost of borrowing, even though you bring the base rate down, the cost of borrowing in international markets is whatever the cost needs to be, and that's likely to be higher. And it has to build in a risk premium. A risk premium, not just in terms of default, but actually that the currency might fall. And it's not surprising that sterling has been falling, because the UK economy is in debt, and the more you need to borrow, if you've got a sterling falling currency, it puts up the risk, and therefore the amount that you're likely to be able to borrow on international markets is restricted. The banks are being given to some very strange deals by this government. They're telling Northern Rock, which they own now, to get the mortgage book in as quickly as possible so they can repay the government, which is sapping the mortgage market for any available funding. So all the other mortgage lenders, like the C&G, they're putting out their mortgages, and it's all been taken up by former Northern Rock customers. They're saying to the bank, base rates have come down, you must pass on the base rate cut. So they're saying to the bank managers, lower your prices, lower your margins, and we're in a highly risky environment where the risk has gone up. Now, banks aren't charities. Why should they then? Why should a bank manager lend if there's a big chance they're going to make a loss? They need to widen their margins. How to survive? Very simple, really. Control your expenditure. What sadly our government isn't doing, you need to control your expenditure, and you've got to be ruthless. It means job losses, and I know it's harsh, but actually what you've got to do, you've got to look after your customers better than you ever have before, and I know you're all trying desperately hard to do that. Control your debtors, make sure your debts don't get too long because of the bad debt risk. Talk to your bank. Now, I know some of you will find that difficult, but you need to go and talk to your bank manager. Stay in touch, tell them what's going on, because that is the best way of making sure that whatever credit is available is going to come your way. And my conclusion is, sadly, the government's being driven by events. It can't go on like this. Markets are plainly losing confidence, and you can see that in sterling. We're going to be paying for this for years ahead, and basically we've got to hang on to cash and tighten our belts. I'm afraid it's going to be harsh when you need a bit of austerity. So on that cheerful note, I'll move on.
Next, we have Charles Curry. Charles is a successful local businessman running a high-tech company in my constituency. His business was hit hard when the dot-com bubble burst, and he gives an excellent insight into how he turned his company away from the brink of bankruptcy back to operating successfully in a global marketplace.
I'll tell you about a story that befell my company, Cllr Technology, based in Lidbrook. I've worked through 2 recessions in my life. One, the oil industry in the 80s, and I was made redundant and started my business. The other, the dot-com crash in 2000, 2001, 2002. And this is the story of that and how we have come through it. Because our balance sheet was wrecked. I should have brought my balance sheet from that year to show you, to compare it with the one that Mike's been passed around. We actually lost 1.2 million that year. Very interesting. The collapse of the dot-com bubble in 2002. And in those days, there were too many telecom operators selling too much bandwidth. Maybe today it's too many banks selling too much debt. And so we worked on turnaround plan number 1. And my then managing director and my sales director and my finance director promised me that they would turn the business round and we'd get it back on its feet. And we would try and sell more stuff, and we got all this stuff on the forecast. Fantastic, we'll sell more stuff. It didn't work. It was a nightmare at the time, I can tell you. If you've got your house on the line, you have to let people go, people you've worked with for years. You have to say to them, I'm sorry, but I can't afford to pay you. Absolute nightmare. Don't want to go there again. Where are we now? We've now got $1 million in the bank, and I'm talking to my bank and saying, you're not giving me enough interest rate on my $1 million. So how are we doing this?